Welcome to today's class. Today we are going to be looking at cost volume profit analysis. Now we are going to be studying how a change in volume of activity will affect the cost of the product and also the profit of the company. Now, one of the tools that we are to use in this cost volume analysis is break-even point analysis, margin of safety analysis, and all that. So we will start immediately without waste of time. I have ab initio told you that cost volume deals with the study of how a change in the volume of activity or level of activity will affect cost and profit of the company. The little assumptions that surround CVP, cost is either fixed or variable. Cost is either fixed or variable. You understand that these are the assumptions. 2, contribution is constant. 3, contribution to sales ratio is constant at all levels of activity. Sales price is constant and variable cost is constant, and there is only one line of product. Now, contribution theory. Contribution is simply the difference between sales and variable costs. In other words, contribution is sales price minus variable cost. Don't forget this. It is important in performance management. Now, this is how it's calculated. Sales, this is a format. Sales price minus total variable cost. Total variable costs include total variable production cost and total variable selling cost. You add them together, that gives you total variable cost. So now with this done, so I would like us to now take a good question to buttress our point. But before we take that question, I would like us to look at break-even point analysis and the formula. The formula for break-even point analysis is simple. In fact, break-even point is that point where the seller makes no profit nor loss. At that point, sales is equal to what? Cost. I hope that makes sense to you. Good. So we now look at the formula for break-even point. So calculation of break-even point. So break-even point as per unit is total fixed cost divided by contribution per unit. Break-even point in sales is equal to total fixed cost divided by contribution sales ratio. Now let's take this example. A company makes and sells a single product. The variable cost is 10 naira and the selling price is 18 naira, and the budgeted fixed cost is 400,000. Determine the break-even point in units and in revenue. So we now have one break-even point in units will now be total fixed cost, which is 400,000 divided by contribution margin, which is 8. How do we get 8 as the contribution margin? We said 18 naira minus 10 naira will give you what? 8. So when you divide, you have 50,000 units. I hope that is simple. Now for break-even points for sales, total fixed cost divided by contribution sales ratio, which is 400,000 divided by 0.444. Now, how do we get our contribution marginal ratio? We say contribution divided by sales, which is contribution is 8 naira and sales is what? 18 naira. So when you divide both, you have 900,000 naira. Now, let's see how contribution per unit was calculated. It is 18 divided by minus 10 will give you 8 naira. Now, for contribution sales ratio, it is 8 divided by 18, which is contribution divided by 8, sales will give you 0.44. I hope that makes sense to you. These are the formulas you must master and adapt. Now let's look at another formula, which is marginal safety. I do tell my students that marginal safety is that margin that communicates to us how much we will lose in sales before we can make a loss. So margin of safety is that margin by which the company is safe from making what? A loss. Now we move on to margin of safety. ratio. So we have this. So we have budgeted sales in units will give us this. That's the formula. Budgeted sales minus break-even point sales will give you margin of safety. So assuming you budgeted 50,000 units and you sold 30,000 units, your margin of safety is 20,000 units, which is 50,000 minus 20,000. It's very simple. So have this formula at the back of your heart and you will enjoy it very well. Now we'll move on to take a question. Now let's continue with the previous example. Assuming that the budgeted sales is 62,500 units, find the margin of safety. Now, since budgeted sales is 62,500, remember the formula for margin of safety is budgeted sales minus break-even point sales. So budgeted sales is now 62,500. Our break-even point sales is now 50,000, which was the break-even point we got computed above. So we have 12,500, which is our margin of safety. So this is margin of safety in units. So to get margin of safety in naira, you multiply it by the sales price. It will now give you margin of safety in naira, which is this value, 225,000 naira. Good. Now let's look at how you can get targeted profit. You see, break-even point analysis is important because it enables the company to know how much they can sell in order to achieve a targeted profit. So it's simple. We just adjust the formula of break-even point by pi. So we'll now move on. Targeted volume. Therefore, the break-even point will aid a lot in that regard. So we now have targeted volume will now be total fixed cost plus targeted profit, or in brackets, divided by contribution per unit. You see, the only thing that changed here is targeted profit. Now we have targeted sales. So for you to get your targeted sales, it is total fixed cost plus target profit, or in brackets, divided by contribution sales ratio. You already know how to compute contribution per unit, and you already know how to compute contribution sales ratio. I will reiterate the formula again. Contribution per unit is variable sales price minus variable cost, while contribution sales ratio is contribution per unit divided by sales price per unit. So we'll now take this practice question 1 to appreciate what we have here. So we now have a company makes a single product that it sells at 80 naira per unit. The total fixed cost is 360,000 naira for the period, and the contribution sales ratio is 60%. So budgeted production and sales for the period is 8,000 units. Now required, calculate the margin of safety for the period as a percentage of budgeted sales. Now listen, they give you fixed cost, they gave you sales price, they gave you contribution sales ratio, they gave you budgeted profit, budgeted sales, but they did not give you variable cost and contribution per unit. And you are asked to calculate margin of safety. And what is a margin? What is margin of safety? In formula, it is budgeted sales minus what? Break-even sales. So you need to find your break-even sales. And to find your break-even sales, we come under here. Your break-even sales will now be contribution per unit, which is 54 naira. Contribution per unit, which is 54 naira. Are you there? Now, now how do we get this 54 naira as contribution per unit? 80 times 60% will give you 54 naira. 80 times 60% will give you 54 naira. So this is our contribution per unit. So that is how you get your contribution per unit. Once you are given sales price and you are given contribution sales ratio, multiply that ratio of sales contribution sales ratio against your sales, you now have your contribution per unit. So our contribution per unit is 54. You can observe that contribution per unit was calculated using the CS ratio. Now we now get our break-even point in unit, which is total fixed cost divided by contribution per unit. Remember in the equation, the total fixed cost is 360,000, and we've gotten our contribution per unit to be 54. So divide, you have 6,667 units. Now with this gotten, you can now compute your margin of safety. So your margin of safety will now be budgeted sales, which is what, 8,000, minus break-even sales, which is what, 6,667, will now give you margin of safety in units. So to get your margin of safety in naira, you multiply by sales price of 90 naira. So you now have this. So these are margin of safety in naira. Now the question said, establish margin of safety as a percentage of budgeted sales. How do you do that? You now say margin of safety in units divided by budgeted sales. So this divided by this. That is why I use the this division sign here. I hope you can see it. Good. So this divided by this divided by this will give you times 100 will give you 16.7%. So that is what we were asked to do, and that is just number one solution. So we will look at other questions subsequently. This is just to introduce you into break-even point analysis. So hopefully tomorrow or Saturday we'll finish it up and move to the next topic. Thank you for attending.